When it comes down to it, life is all about the serious and significant things, like nous, judgement and making sound choices, which is a huge pain in the rear for those of us who look at the world with the same flippant attitude that we always have. Thankfully, we're not the only ones. And this list of formerly extremely famous footballers who overnight became feckless fools should make all of us feel a lot better about ourselves. Hello and welcome to Goalside. In today's video we'll talk about players whose careers were finished by one bad transfer. If you like the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel and turn on the post notifications. So without wasting any time, let's dive right into the video. Hleb, Arsenal to Barcelona, £11.8 million. When Hleb first considered relocating to Barcelona, he displayed a level of ambition that was much beyond his status. He ought to have performed a self-examination right then and there. On the other hand, all he did was go and sign the papers. After another 5 La Liga starts, he was out on his ear, and from that point on, things quickly began to slide downward. Before he called it a day at BATE, he made stops in Birmingham, Krylia Sovetov and Konyaspor on his route to Gensler Bellion. Danielson from Sao Paulo was sold to Real Betis for £21.5 million British pounds. Before he made this move, he was completely unknown. Before this transfer, it seems that Real Betis was virtually unknown to the general public. However, given that it was a world record, it seemed inevitable that he would become famous. Except that he wasn't at all. 2 years later, Betis were demoted, and as a result he was forced to waste his career playing for a variety of teams, including Bordeaux, FC Dallas and Vietnamese side Haiphong, just to name a few. Fernando Torres, Liverpool to Chelsea, £50 million. This particular car accident transfer involved 10 vehicles, making it a particularly severe pile-up. At the end of the game at Anfield, Torres had some signs of decline, but he was still able to kick a ball in a straight line. Unfortunately, he lost that skill at Stamford Bridge, and despite the fact that he had some impressive moves in his repertoire, he's never been the same since. However, he already has a medal for winning the Champions League, so who can say for sure who came out on top? David Bellion was traded from Sunderland to Manchester United for a fee of £2 million. It is heartless to try and prevent a young man from fulfilling his ambition of moving to Old Trafford. On the other hand, we're a callous group of idiots. Even though he had somewhat of a resurgence at Bordeaux, he was never able to return to the top table of world football. He was meant to be the next Thierry Henry, but instead he was much more like a poor Darius Vassell. Radamel Falcao, Atletico to Monaco, £50 million. So tell us, Falcao, what is it about playing for a team that had no fans but multiple billions in the bank that made you want to go and sign with them? In fewer than 2 seasons, Falcao went from being the absolute daddy of European goal scoring to looking like an old nag, which, in its own best interests, really ought to be destroyed. Andrei Shevchenko, AC Milan to Chelsea for £30.8 million. What is it about Chelsea that always seems to attract the best strikers in the world? Another one that they completely and utterly damaged beyond repair is this one. Before making the transfer to Stamford Bridge, the player who won the Ballon d'Or in 2004 had totaled 83 goals in his previous 3 seasons combined. He managed to score a total of 22 goals for the Blues before skulking off to Dynamo Kiev in the hopes that nobody would notice. Thomas Brolin was transferred from Parma to Leeds for a fee of £4.5 million. During those times, this was a major issue, and it was well warranted. At Leeds, the only thing that became larger for Brolin was his girth, despite the fact that his fame was on the rise. After stints at Crystal Palace, of all places, Zurich and Hudiksvall, his career came to a screeching halt and he left with 4 goals and several stone heavier than when he arrived. Scott Sinclair, Swansea to Man City for £8 million. Why Scott, why do you ask? Everyone, including Roberto Mancini's wife, could see where this was going, and it wasn't with you successfully convincing him that you were a better player than David Silva. Sinclair did in fact squander 3 years of his life before being forced to endure the humiliation that comes with playing football in the Midlands. Stan Collymore, Nottingham Forest to Liverpool for £8.5 million. Stan's move to Liverpool was quite fruitful in terms of the number of goals he scored. However, he never truly appeared to be a member of the team, had trouble settling in, and this difficulty was the beginning of the turn in his otherwise positive trajectory. Collymore's career was finished just 4 years after he was sent to Villa after just 2 seasons, and his off-field antics were the only thing that really troubled the headlines during that time. Seth Johnson, Derby to Leeds, £7 million. This one was already doomed before the ink on the enormous novelty cheque had even had a chance to dry. There's no way that a footballer with the name Seth could ever be valued £7 million. Just doesn't make sense. And so it was that Johnson demonstrated with worrying frequency at Elland Road until he scuttled his way back to Derby 4 years later with only one solitary England cap under his arm to show for his big break. Shaun Wright-Phillips, Man City to Chelsea, £21 million. Before SWP arrived at Chelsea, his dribbling was a blend of great balance and top quality ball control that was carefully poised. After that, he had the appearance of a young child playing with a balloon. After sitting on the bench for 3 seasons, he returned to City, but things were not the same there. How could they be? Albert Luque, Deportivo to Newcastle. This is something that Newcastle excels at. They're able to identify a foreign team that's successful, remove one of its components, and lead the team down a path that leads to rank incompetence. Luque came in as a young and talented Spanish striker, but he departed the team a shattered man and went on to score only 13 more goals in his whole career. Pierluigi Casiraghi, Lazio to Chelsea, £5.4 million. At the tail end of the 20th century, it was quite fashionable to sign Italian strikers in their late 20s, so the fact that this one happened didn't raise any significant red flags. Casiraghi tore his cruciate ligament after playing 10 games for Chelsea, and after undergoing 10 operations on the injury, he was forced to retire from football. Joe Cole, Chelsea to Liverpool. How did Joe end up in that position? The youngster who was once heralded as the boy who would save English football ended up playing for Coventry in League One. Undoubtedly, everything started at Liverpool, where a red card on the player's first game in the Premier League established the tone for an unravelling that's been excruciating for everyone. Faustino Asprilla, Parma to Newcastle. It's true that during his time with Newcastle he scored a spectacular hat-trick against Barcelona in Europe, but in the grand scheme of things the club made a vanity signing that they never needed, and as a result they really messed him around. Following leaving the Northeast, the prolific goalscorer for Colombia was only able to add 3 more goals to his tally for his country after a 3-year absence at St James's, where he'd been playing for the previous 3 years. Everton defender Francis Jeffers, Everton to Arsenal. You're not allowed to type Fox in the box. The truth is that this one makes us feel miserable. It was expected that he would perform quite well. After that, he simply stopped remembering how to play football. Surprisingly, he was never able to score more than 4 goals in a season for the rest of his career after the catastrophe that he had with the Gunners. What are your thoughts on these footballers whose careers came to an end at that point? Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you soon with the next video. Thank you so much for watching.